My headphones, you're a little distorted.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, that's much better. Okay, perfect. What was your question? Sorry, Sammy.
Why don't you tell me a little bit about this short that you're working on? I'm looking forward to hearing about it.
Yeah, so the short is called Waving. It's a unflinching portrayal of sort of the misunderstood condition that is obsessive compulsive disorder. So it really seeks to destigmatize, to educate, but ultimately to help people understand what it's actually like to live with OCD and not generally what people assume OCD is like.
And what made you decide to focus on this specifically?
So I've been a national advocate for OCD for the last 12 years. I was born with it and struggled most of my life until receiving life-changing treatment at the age of 31, which was about 12 or 13 years ago. Um, and then after that, I realized that it's actually very treatable and, life could have been very different up to that point. So I wanted to make sure that nobody else kind of went through what I went through. It turns out there's a very vibrant OCD community out there that are busy doing the same work. And so OCD is sort of in the vernacular as sort of this quirky personality trait that's about organizing or cleanliness when actually it's a much more diabolical and debilitating disorder. And so it's really important to educate the general public about what it actually is, how it impacts individuals, how debilitating it can be, and how painful it is, to be honest. And then obviously for those suffering, to let them know that they're not alone, they don't have to suffer in silence, and there's help and hope.
I think you explain exactly what it is. I know you got a little bit into the stereotype of it, but can you explain exactly what it is and what most people suffer from?
Yeah, for sure. So OCD is obsessive compulsive disorder. I would start with the majority of individuals, whether that's, you know, um, lay people or experts or what have you, believe it to be cleanliness or neatness or hand washing. And while those are aspects of it, ultimately obsessions and compulsion, OCD is made up of obsessions, which are unwanted, intrusive thoughts and images and urges that trigger intensely distressing feelings. So essentially anxiety. And then those are followed by compulsions, which are behaviors that an individual engages in an attempt to get rid of the obsessions and decrease the anxiety and distress. And so, in short, we all can have obsessions. We can be obsessed with our favorite sports team or our favorite music group, and we can be compulsive. We can buy all their merchandise, attend all the games, and go to all the concerts. But when it starts interfering with your daily life, that's when it becomes the disorder, and that's when it becomes something much more than just an obsession or a compulsion.
And it's connected to any other kinds of issues like autism, Asperger's, anything like that. Is there a correlation with that?
Great question. So, there's not a direct correlation. There are a number of comorbid conditions. So many times you will see individuals with autism and obsessive compulsive disorder, and you will see a lot of comorbidity with OCD and Asperger's, as you said. There's also related disorders like body dysmorphic disorder or hoarding or trichotillomania, skin picking, hair pulling, things like that. Those are all sort of what they call related disorders to OCD, and then autism and wow, I already forgot. I already forgot the one you mentioned. Autism um, and
Asperger's.
yeah, thank you. And Asperger's are more of a comorbid conditions that are often common with it, but not necessarily because of it.
And what is the biggest challenge about making waving?
You know, I think that the media has done a poor job of illustrating what OCD is, and that's not necessarily their fault. From time to diagnosis to treatment, it's 14 to 17 years, which is insane and ridiculous. But also, the media is a visual medium. And so, of course, it's much easier to show, what hand washing looks like, what tapping or touching, turning the stove off and on, light switches. That is obviously easier to illustrate than an intrusive thought, which may not look like anything. I think this film sought to both educate and show what OCD can be like for most people, which is comprised of, intense, intrusive thoughts of sexual violent nature, and also what it feels like to have it, how uncomfortable, discomfort, angst, distress, and the pain associated with experiencing OCD. We don't want to have these thoughts. They're not aligned with our values. They are not things that we want to do or act in any way, shape, or form. And therein lies the stigma. So, for instance, a common obsession is, what if I accidentally hurt someone that I care about? That is not something that we want to do. That is, it does not mean we're going to do it. It is simply a scary thought that makes us afraid. And so that disconnection between people understanding that, that somebody with OCD is more inclined to do it, which is absolutely not the truth and a falsehood, versus, a scary thought that we all have at times, but ours just gets stuck and cyclical, where we get stuck on it. So it was really important to illustrate sides of OCD that are actually more common within the disorder than, say, hand washing or checking compulsions, but are harder to illustrate in the media.
How do you feel about the way it's portrayed in the media? Like on shows like Monk is the most common one. How do you feel about that way that's portrayed as opposed to the realistic things of OCDs?
Yeah, I mean, I think that things like Monk and As Good as It Gets, I think they're really damaging to OCD and individuals with OCD. There's no upside to OCD. Nobody wants it. It's not a decision. It's not a choice. It's a disease and a disorder. So obviously, there's aspects that are, funny or comedic, but to utilize OCD as sort of like a superpower to solve crimes is not only not beneficial, but stigmatizing and prevents individuals from seeking treatment because people don't take it seriously. Or let's say, is it good as it gets? It's funny, sure, but it doesn't show actually the pain and agony that he's in, or that at least somebody would be in associated with OCD. There are other situations that have done a better job of showing OCD a little bit more realistically, but ultimately they're still using comedy to alleviate the discomfort. So shows like that are actually really damaging, and not, like I said, not just educating the public, but really preventing individuals from seeking treatment, or when they do seek treatment or do talk to their doctor or professional, they have a misunderstanding of what the illness is. And so it was really important for us to do something that was authentic, that didn't diffuse the discomfort with comedy, and frankly doubled and tripled down on the discomfort, because if you're watching it and you're feeling uneasy and uncomfortable, that is the same experience that someone with OCD is experiencing.
Interesting. And what was the most surprising thing you learned while making the documentary?
Watching the impact. It's not a documentary; it's a scripted short.
Okay.
But I think watching, first of all, our lead actor Ralph Ineson, who has been in some amazing projects and is a very established actor. Watching him learn about OCD and how to portray it on film, and watching his sort of understanding of it and become aware of what it is and how it impacts people was really, really interesting. Also, just the crew. I mean, everybody, whether you're shooting a movie or I'm speaking in public, in some way people can relate and either say to me, I do similar things, or I know somebody who does, or my child does, or my parent does. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that they or their loved ones have OCD, but, it definitely sort of opens the door to conversation and gets people reflecting. And that's ultimately, what it was like to make the film, whether it was our cast, whether it was our crew, whether it was just people that were watching us making it in the towns in the UK. So, ultimately, I think it's enlightening.
And what else are you working on? Are you going to continue working on projects based on OCD, or do you have anything else on the docket?
I don't think we can ever have enough content about OCD. I personally have made some documentaries on it, and I'm working on some scripted content. But as far as we go, this team anyway, I think we'll probably move on to other creative content. But ultimately, the role of this film was twofold. For those struggling with OCD, it was to let them know that they're not alone, that we see you, and there's help and there's hope. It's a very treatable mental illness. And then also for the public that sees it that may not have had any interaction or understanding of OCD, helping them understand what it is, how debilitating it actually is, and maybe they'll learn more about it, access resources, and just become better informed so individuals don't go so long without getting the proper treatment.
One thing I was asking people I interview is, tell me a fun fact about yourself.
I'm so sorry. Say that one more time.
Chocolate chip cookies are in the bag.
Oh, I was just asking you to tell me a fun fact about yourself.
Oh wow. A fun fact. I may sound 6'4", but I'm 5'7". Um, the other fun fact is having nothing to do with anything. This is so random because I just said this fun fact at a conference was I choreographed a dance routine for Usher in high school.
Ooh, that's impressive.
I thought, considering I can't dance, it is pretty impressive. But we went to the same high school, same year, and so I was choreographing the chorus, and he was in it. So I could say I choreographed for Usher.
And since you're a TV site, what are you watching these days?
Gosh, I just finished Presumed Innocent on Apple TV, which I thought was some of the best TV I've seen in a long time. That's the Jake Gyllenhaal Sarsgaard. I think J.J. Abrams produced it and David E. Kelly wrote it, but that was really, really, really good. And I was pretty impressed with it.
Nice. Where can we follow you on social media so we can continue to follow your progress?
Yeah, for sure. You can visit me at ETHWriter, so that's ETHWRITER, on Instagram. And then also, I would encourage people to visit Waving Film. That's WAVING Film, FILM.com, where they can learn more about the film, as well as see resources to OCD and related disorders.
Wonderful. Well, it's been a pleasure. Thank you. And I can't wait to talk again soon.
Okay, thanks so much for having me, Sammy. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. Bye bye.
Okay, bye-bye.